Hey guys, it's Andrea from VW Family Farm, and thanks for joining me in the kitchen today. Today I'm going to do a video that some of you have asked for and I've had a lot of questions about. It is how to start your own sourdough starter from scratch, from the beginning. This is going to be Sourdough 101, so stay tuned. Okay, so today I'm going to teach you how to start your sourdough starter from basically the get-go, from nothing. You can buy a sourdough starter, but there's really no need. I have formed one that is thriving. It's the strongest thing. I've neglected it, mistreated it, and it has lasted me for years. Sourdough starters, if treated somewhat properly, can last actually for hundreds of years. I've read stories of people when they were painting for gold out in Alaska, keeping them like up next to their body at night to keep them alive, to give them a little heat, because it is a treasured thing. If you find a good sourdough starter, it's something you don't want to let go of. But let's start at the beginning. Why would we even want to do this? Let's begin with that. Why is sourdough any better than just commercial bread you can go buy? For one, you can make a more simple, healthy loaf of bread, leaving out things like preservatives and words you can't even pronounce and all those things. And let's talk about the yeast that's in commercial bread. Commercial yeast, like baker's yeast or dry active yeast, those are produced in a lab. They are much more sensitive to temperature. You have to be very careful about the temperature you put them in, or you could kill them. So therefore, they cannot survive in an acidic environment. So what that means is there is this thing in sourdough that is not in commercial bread. It's called lactobacilli, because lactobacilli cannot survive the conditions that commercial yeast needs to live. So they do not coexist in commercial breads. And lactobacilli is what is responsible for breaking down those anti-nutrients like phytic acid, neutralizing enzyme inhibitors, because enzyme inhibitors are things that suppress your digestion. That's why after you eat commercial bread, you might feel bloated. Those things are not present in commercial bread because they can't live in the environment the commercial yeast needs. They are present in sourdough, however, so that makes sourdough much more digestible. So let's talk about that yeast and lactobacilli. To grow your own sourdough starter, what you're going to essentially be doing is capturing wild yeasts and bacteria. And let's talk about the wild yeasts first. Wild yeasts they're going to add B vitamins into your bread. They're also going to break down gluten. Now, I got into sourdough through Sally Fallon's book, Nourishing Traditions. She encourages not giving up breads and grains and all those things, but preparing them properly. And this is one of those methods. This would be considered soaking or souring. And so I'm not going to claim at all that if you have celiac, you should be trying this, because that is more than likely not true. This is gluten. So if you cannot handle gluten at all, you should not be trying to eat sourdough that's made out of wheat. However, there are alternatives. You don't have to make sourdough out of gluten. You can make a gluten-free sourdough. I don't have experience with that, so this video is about making one with wheat flour. But you definitely can do that, and if you desire, you can look into that. But even if you do not have celiac, if eating bread and commercially prepared grains and things like that gives you digestive trouble, this is a great alternative. Sometimes I know when I eat bread, I'll get that just bloated feeling. It just doesn't agree with me. And I do not get that ever when I eat sourdough. So let's talk about the bacteria also. So the bacteria is that lactobacilli I was telling you about, and that is going to neutralize phytic acid and enzyme inhibitors, making this more digestible for your body. Now, the bacteria and the yeasts both feed on the simple sugars present in the flour. So that's how they're growing and proliferating. And as they do, they both produce a certain amount of carbon dioxide. They also produce lactic acid, ethanol, that's why, which is a small amount of alcohol. That's why when you're rising a loaf of bread, you might think, you hear people say, oh, that smells yeasty, meaning that smells good. That signature bread smell when someone's baking bread. Also, the yeast produce acetic acid, which is vinegar, which gives it an acidic environment and allows the lactobacilli to live and grow as well. The ethanol and the lactic acid are going to give it that classic sour taste. Now, if you're thinking, I don't like sour taste, there's ways around that. You just don't let your bread rise as long. You just don't sour it as much. So you can play around with this. You can do so many things with sourdough. It does not have to be, if you've had a bad experience with it and you didn't care for it, there's all different ways to do it. So do not give up. And one more thing I want to say before we get started, that carbon dioxide I mentioned a while ago, that is what's going to help your bread rise. But that's also going to be very important in our beginning stages of forming a starter, because we're going to be looking for evidence that that carbon dioxide is being produced. So let's go over to the kitchen and get started. This is really a simple process, but I want to show you it firsthand. So let's go. Okay, so this is really simple. We're just gonna begin this culture. You can call this your starter, your mother culture, any of those things. Here is your magic ratio. Every time you feed and divide your starter, this is the ratio you're gonna use. A 1/4 cup water, 3/8 cup flour. So I'm gonna use my filtered water. A 1/4 cup. Then this is 1/8 of a cup, so I'm gonna do 3 of these. Okay, you're gonna stir this and stir it really good. From everything I've read, it says stir vigorously. So just stir it really good. Scrape down the sides. Just get it really stirred and incorporated. But I'm gonna be flat out honest with you. I don't always stir this the best, and it's still going to feed in there. It's still gonna do its thing. Okay, that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna put a lid on it loosely, and you're gonna just put it aside. It says to put in a warm place between 65 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, but I'm gonna be honest, I just set it in my kitchen. Now do not set it somewhere it's gonna get super hot, like on your toaster or on your stove or something like that. It just needs to be warm, not hot. And just leave it alone. Just walk away for 12 hours. It's gonna start feeding on the simple sugars in the flour, and you're capturing those wild yeasts, like I told you. They're gonna start feeding. I told you that they produce carbon dioxide. So when that happens, that's when the sourdough starter is going to start to bubble. After about 12 hours, you're going to come back. Let's pretend and fast forward it's been 12 hours. Okay, I want to make sure you understand. After the first 12 hours, the very first time you fed it, and then you come back 12 hours later, there's only going to be a few bubbles. That's okay. You're just getting it going. You may only have 3 or 4 bubbles, but that's a good sign. As long as each time that you feed it every 12 hours, your amount of bubbles is increasing, you're on the right track. But I just wanted to clarify that. You're not going to have a ton of bubbles right there at the beginning. We're going to come back, open it up. There should be some bubbles on the top. Okay? What we're going to do at that point, and this is what you're going to do every time you feed it, you're going to discard half of this. Now, at the beginning, there is nothing to do with this. This is not, you can put it in your compost, feed it to your chicken, something like that. There is nothing else to do with this. This is not a starter yet. This is just a flour water mixture where we're trying to make a home for the starter. But it will not rise anything. It's pretty much useless. So put this in your compost. Let me tell you, I've had people say, well, what if I don't? What if I just keep feeding it? After about a week, you're gonna have an outrageous amount. I follow Wardy Harmon a lot on Traditional Cooking School, and she said that it would fill up your house. I haven't done the math to that, but it's gonna keep doubling every time. So it very well could. It's gonna be a crazy amount. So you're gonna discard half, okay? Okay, so I discarded half. Now I'm gonna add my magical recipe again. 3/8 cup flour. because I still have half of that original in my jar. I only discarded half. And 1/4 cup of water in the same jar. My jar that has my starter in it, in fact, I'm going to show it to you. I want you to look how dirty looking this thing is, but this is magical right here. This will make the best sourdough. It's just, it's not spoiled or anything. It's just dirty on the sides, but there's nothing wrong with it, and I'm not changing this jar because this, I'm not messing with a good thing. I do want to show you though, there's a little dark stuff that's risen to the top. This smells really yeasty. The dark stuff that's risen to the top is called hooch. It's a ethanol, it's the alcohol it puts off. Again, like I told you, yeasty smelling bread, that's what it'll smell like. Any bread you're making has a small amount of alcohol in it because that's what rises the bread. So you can dump that off or stir it right back in. Doesn't matter. Not gonna hurt either way. Okay, back to what we were doing. So you've discarded half, you've added your 3/8 cup flour, 1/4 cup water again. You're just gonna stir vigorously, scrape down the sides, and put your lid back on loosely and set it to the side in your kitchen. And then you're gonna come back 12 hours later and you're gonna do the exact same thing. All right, so you're gonna continue that process every 12 hours for at least a week before you try to make bread. Now, what you're looking for to happen is you're trying to get it to where you're gonna have, each time you feed it, more and more bubbles form. That's a good thing, okay? Even if you get some of that hooch on top that I told you about, that's a good thing. Stir that right back in. You are looking to get your starter to the point where it doubles in size between your 12-hour feedings. It might slightly dome at the top. It's got a really yeasty smell because every time you feed it, you're encouraging those yeasts and bacteria to feed and multiply. You're cultivating them at home, like I told you. You do not need a fully active starter, which is doubled in size, full of bubbles and everything. You don't have to have that for every recipe. This is not the ideal time of year to be starting a starter. It's not impossible, but I don't know how long it's gonna take you to get it strong enough to rise bread. It may take a little longer than a week. It might not, depending on how warm your house is. But go ahead and give it a shot. Get started today. Then you might be making bread in a week. When you get to the point that you're ready to start baking with it, start with pancakes. You can also make pizza crust. It makes a delicious pizza crust. You can make cinnamon rolls. You can make crackers. You can make English muffins. The possibilities are endless. You can make cakes. I would hold off on the bread until it's at least a week old and you're seeing all the qualifications. The doubling in size, doming, smelling yeasty. I wouldn't even look so much for the doming. I would definitely look for doubling in size and full of bubbles. But that's all there is to it, guys. It's easy. You should start it. Don't ever throw it away. That's what I tell people. If you get sick of doing some of this stuff, don't ever just chunk it in the trash. Put it in the fridge. Give it a break. Take a break from it. I do not leave mine at room temperature. Mine stays in the fridge and you can feed it like once a week. If you leave it at room temperature, you need to keep feeding it every 12 hours, or eventually you could get to probably just feeding it once a day. But after that, after it's strong, after a little while, stick it in the fridge, take a break from it, but don't chunk it and quit. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you. Give it a shot. Shoot me any questions you have down in the comments. Leave me a comment if you already do sourdough. Tell me what's your favorite thing to make with it. I appreciate y'all watching. Be sure and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new videos. And we'll see you on the next one. God bless.